if you could go back in time, you could either vote for Donald Trump or Kamala Harris. Who would you rather vote for?
Definitely Trump, I think.
Okay. Why do you support Trump?
Well, I think it's a few things. I do recognize a lot of what he does has been disappointing in the fact that it's more pageantry and, like fake pandering to his masses as opposed to real action. But I guess we could start with like immigration. I do think it's a big threat facing the country.
Okay. How so?
Lowers labor cost, and I think that's really disadvantaged a lot of Americans, especially blue collar. You know, not the elites who are really insulated. Although they're facing a different side of the problem because they're competing against all the H-1Bs. But I do think we need to put America first in supplying quality jobs and competitive wages for our citizens, and both intelligent and lower skilled labor immigration conflicts with that.
Yeah, so I can send you a study right now from the National Bureau of Economic Research that indicates that the increase in the level of immigration has actually led to an increase in employment percentage for people who are already in the country, along with an increase in wages. And then it also increases GDP as well. So I don't really see with the point you're making that it leads to like worse off labor conditions for working class Americans. If anything, it leads to a larger economy and better growth that leads to higher wages on average.
How familiar are you with the study? I mean, I haven't heard of it. I'm curious. Just because the conclusions there don't sound like they check out.
What about it doesn't sound like it checks out?
Like, how would an oversupply of labor lead to higher wages?
There's a increase in the level of demand as well. So it's really about like whether or not it's proportionate. So I can tell you the title of it. It's Immigration's Effect on U.S. Wages and Employment Redux.
So, again, I don't know the study, but the argument is basically that the GDP boost resulting from the supply
Yeah,
is
resulting from the supply and demand leads to a larger size in terms of the economy, insofar as that it produces a higher level of wages and employment.
so actually that makes sense. But what I'd say to that is GDP is such a it's such like a bad metric to measure the
Oh, that's why we
um,
didn't just look at GDP. We looked at wages. It also increases GDP, and also increases employment percentage.
look. I think the cheap labor is ultimately in the best interest of the wealthy capital owning managerial class because that's going to lead to higher profits for corporations ultimately, or even local businesses if they
There's a
can
few
pay and
issues here.
grow for
It's
them.
not just considered cheap labor because immigrants that are coming to the country, they will take market rate because they can, right? Like they're not going to really affect the change in the market rate as much as what people think because they can get that themselves once they have legal status. For people who are in the country undocumented and we're transitioning them from being undocumented to being documented, well now they can demand higher wages than what they were prior. So if anything, that's putting upward pressure on wages, right? Because they're not allowed to pay lower than minimum wage anymore or lower than the market rate. Because the only reason
So
they were able to get away with that is because the undocumented immigrant was forced into those circumstances because they couldn't tell authorities. Now that they can tell authorities because they're documented, well, then that would put
right.
upward pressure on wages.
So, okay, that may alleviate some of the negative pressures of illegal immigration. But to clarify, I think a lot of Trump's base is actually pro-immigration. It's the illegal. Like, if we're one of the greatest countries on earth, why should we not control who has access to the country? Why should we not create some filtering process to let in the best minds, the most, culturally assimilable people, the most
What do you mean by
pro-social?
culturally assimilating people? Like, I'm confused what that means. How do
Well,
you identify
I
that?
think I think a willingness to embrace American values and culture. Like go back half a century, right? So I'm Italian. Um, while there are a lot of proud Italians in the U.S. still today, the culture of like the Ellis Island era
I
was
would say
that families would come.
Italian culture is in a lot of aspects of American culture. Would you agree?
In what in terms of values?
Yeah.
Or you're saying the Italian culture persists even
Italian
today,
culture
as in
persists today, even within America. It's an aspect of American culture. American Italian culture.
yes, but
Okay. Wait, so
there was a
let,
huge effort on behalf of those immigrants to assimilate and Americanize to an extent and adopt American
well, I
values
don't
by
even know.
incorporating.
I don't even know what that means. Now we can talk about that in a second. But the point that I'm making is that the culture is, immigration's a part of the culture, right? So when people come to our country, they bring their culture, and then they also adopt things that exist in the culture already today. That's what
Okay,
happens when people immigrate to places or people go to places. They bring
correct.
stuff from specifically where they came from, and they engage with the stuff of the area. That's what
Yeah,
happens when people engage in immigration.
and so in that lens, there could be a lot of net benefit to like the melting pot theory. But at the same time, we have to acknowledge that part of what makes America great is the values that it was built upon. And if people aren't properly bought into our political system when they come here, then over time that those values are going to decay. And I think
What
I
values?
don't understand American republicanism, democracy. Um,
Okay, so if you don't want to have a threat to our democracy, then why do you support a candidate that incited a violent insurrection at the Capitol and pardoned violent rioters, police officers, and he called them patriots? And he also sent false slates of electors to electoral college to cast Trump votes when he didn't win to try to overturn the election results. I mean, like this guy
um,
still denies the 2020 election to this day with absolutely no evidence. If you cared about our democracy, you wouldn't support a guy like that who also called for the termination of all rules, regulations, and articles, even those found in the Constitution. I feel like that's the
so,
values that are actively being decayed by people like Donald Trump and not by immigrants.
so I see Trump as a reactionary. He's not a tyrant and he's not killing democracy. He's certainly being painted that way by the left. That's not to justify what he's done.
Did you hear
But
anything I
the
just said? I'm sorry. That was actively
so
him undermining our democracy.
okay, so to go point by point, um, so, like he didn't incite an insurrection.
Yes, he
He
did.
made some comments. Obviously, it's a subjective definition of whatever you deem to be inciting an insurrection. But there were also so many curiosities about that day, like the number of FBI agents in the crowd. Uh, there's been a lot of evidence to suggest that this was known about and potentially prompted by the government to potentially frame him. Like there has been an objective witch hunt against him.
Okay. The FBI agents under his administration, he was president. Under his administration.
But
Not
that
only
doesn't mean
FBI
anything.
agents under his administration, but he told people to
The
fight like
FBI
hell.
under
And
Comey,
what?
under Comey, Comey certainly wasn't a loyalist. So
So,
why if the FBI agents were under his presidency, what would that have to do with anything? These are
because
entrenched.
so you're saying again an FBI under the fact that he was controlling, which this was like the second person he put at the head of the FBI, right? So he already fired the first person he put there. Comey was an FBI director then. Um, and in terms of inciting the insurrection, he said fight like hell and to take back the country from those that stole it from them.
But
Any
hasn't
pardon
Obama and Kamala also
and then
used
listen
similar
and then
rhetoric?
listen. This is an important part. And then he pardoned the violent rioters who police officers and he called them patriots. Him pardoning them tells us that he condoned the violence on that day. If he did not condone the violence, then he would not have done so. He would not have pardoned them.
Look, I think as with all things, the truth lies somewhere in the middle. Certainly, some of his actions are condemnable, and I started this conversation by saying I'm not even the biggest supporter, but there has been this severe us versus them mentality perpetrated by both sides. Trump's supporters see him as unfairly targeted. Like I said, he's a reactionary, and a lot of what he said is subjective. It's not blatant insurrection. Um, but like you could agree that Obama and Kamala and a lot of Democrats have used similar rhetoric in actively resisting Republican
Nope.
you know
Nope. And also, this isn't subjective, and this is not unfair targeting for me to say that Donald Trump pardoned violent rioters, police officers, and he called them patriots, which means he condoned the violence on that day. That's an obvious and
don't
objective
Democrats
fact.
condone violence? Democrats condone violence at the ICE protests, at the BLM. Like it's similar stuff. It's both sides pointing fingers.
When name one person in political office that condoned political violence on behalf of the Democrats.
Um, haven't recently. I apologize. I don't have like all my facts up to date, but recently, like mayors of Democratic cities have been supportive of resisting federal deployment of ICE troops.
So the resisting of ICE troops is not supporting political violence. I'm confused. You have to give me a specific point of supporting political violence. Name one Democrat that supported political violence.
I don't have that for you.
So there
And
isn't any you can point to. When I can point to
well,
your
I don't
president,
know it, and it could be subjective. Sorry,
I can point to your president though.
he has a big mouth. Yeah, I don't think anyone will deny that.
So then why can't you acknowledge that Donald Trump specifically is like condoning political violence here?
Sure, I can, but I don't think he's the threat to democracy that he's painted out to be. I think he's a
Um,
reactionary plant, and
he is. I literally gave you the explicit circumstances of how.
okay.
Like genuinely, how do you dispute that?
Um, yeah, I don't know if I have enough to continue this conversation in a productive way. So if you want to pivot or do something else,
I just think
I'll
this is an
concede.
obvious point for you to be like, yeah, I don't support this guy. Like this is obviously like him trying to undermine our democracy. You brought up caring about democracy, that our values are decaying in terms of democracy. Who's decaying those values? It's not undocumented immigrants. It's not documented immigrants. It's not trans people. It's not Democrats. It's Donald Trump, right? All of these claims about it's everyone else, scapegoat to everyone else but Donald Trump, when he literally incited a violent insurrection at the Capitol, undermined the 2020 election results, still to this day. And he called the people patriots who police officers on January 6th after pardoning them. Seriously, you cannot look past this. This is something that you have to draw the line with.
Right. I can see that. I think how Trump supporters view him, they basically see like the entrenched elite in this country. Democrats are sided with them. I'm talking about technocrats, um, the
Who?
managerial
Be specific.
academia.
Be specific with who you're referencing.
Like billionaires are mostly Democrat, right? Because I think democratic policies more favorably support
This is the
large.
craziest take ever. The craziest take ever. You know that Donald Trump's policies are literally to take money from the poor and give to the rich. Like that's literally
Wait,
what his policies do.
was I wrong? Was I wrong though? Like Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, all of them are typically Democrat. Billionaires overwhelmingly fall in line with Democratic voting.
They're literally all in the room with Donald Trump. When you say
Well,
when you say this,
obviously they are
their
because they,
policies not only specifically are specifically targeted towards helping rich and wealthy Americans, but can you even name a single policy that Donald Trump advocated for that helps the working class more than it helps rich people?
I actually think Trump is like a false prophet in that sense. He ran on this populist platform to help the middle class, and I really don't think he's been doing that. So I'm not going to defend him there. I think his big beautiful bill, from what I do know about it, didn't do much for ordinary Americans, and included corporate tax cuts again. Um, so yeah, I'm not defending him in terms of his support of the rich. He is one of those billionaire elite, but he represents, or he at least ran on representing a different vision, a populist vision, a middle
But like,
class.
what specifically about that is beneficial to working class Americans more than it's beneficial to rich people?
About what?
What specifically about his policies benefit working class Americans more than it benefits rich people? Because everything I pointed you to benefits the rich at the expense of the working class. Like, for example, tariffs.
So tariffs. I think that manufacturing is very important to have in this country. We've seen our economy suffer in the wake of exporting all of our manufacturing. Yes, we do have a great services economy for like the college educated, um, fairly affluent in this country. But for everyone below the top 20%, I think the exporting of all our manufacturing has been a huge problem. Look at like the Rust Belt, look at Pennsylvania. So I think Trump's tariffs can serve as a way to make American production competitive again from a price point, and that'll ultimately help a lot of middle class Americans. It
Yeah.
is
So
short term pain, though.
yeah, would you like to take a look at this graph here real quick? So this graph right here is real private fixed investment, which is just manufacturing investment, right? Do you see
Okay.
this? So
Yeah.
this is specifically by year. So this is when Trump originally here. Actually, I need to fix it so that you can see it a little bit better. Make it a little bit smaller. Right there. Boom. Okay, so this is when Trump originally got in office here in 2017. This is when he
Okay.
left. It went down. Okay.
Wait, sorry. What am I? This is manufacturing. What?
This is real private fixed manufacturing investment. So this is
Okay.
essentially the how you look at manufacturing investment in the country. So year's 2017, quarter one, when he first got in office. When he leaves office, what is it at? It's at lower than what it was originally. Biden gets in office. You see this massive increase. That's all Biden. Now you see here's when Biden leaves, and then Trump gets in office, and look at that decline, decline. So it's declined since Trump's got in office.
Um, there could be other ways to explain that. What's your take on that?
My
That
take on this is specifically that the tariffs have increased the cost of production for manufacturing within the United States because they've caused the manufacturing process to become more expensive due to the fact that aspects of the manufacturing process come from countries around the world, and since they're being tariffed and we can't outsource that to places within the United States, then it's going to lead to the price being added to the product because it's a necessary
right,
aspect of that production process.
right, and I don't think anyone is denying that tariffs will lead to higher prices for products. It is you're right in saying it is a tax on Americans because they're the consumers of these products. But what does the investment show? Like maybe it shows a lack of confidence in long term adherence to that policy because if we were to stick to a tariff schedule over the medium to long term, then wouldn't that definitively increase investment in American manufacturing?
At some
I don't
point, there
know. Like
might
I don't know how to.
at some point there might be an increase in domestic manufacturing. We actually don't quite know. At some point there might be, but that actually doesn't account for the fact that we're going to lose overall GDP because now we're going to be exporting less to countries around the world. But yeah, actually, we don't even know if domestic manufacturing will increase, right? Given the implementation of this, because of the fact that one, it's not certain in the long run in terms of bringing back that manufacturing to the country, and two, it is the case that the manufacturing process has become more expensive in the country, therefore disincentivizing production within the United States.
Right, but you just said we don't know, and are you taking that as a reason to not do it? Because I look at the current
I'm
trajectory, we
taking that
have
as a reason as
really
to
bad wealth.
indicate that there's definitely not an overall benefit from tariffs. Not only do you not really get much of an increase in domestic manufacturing, but GDP declines and you harm so many other
Okay,
industries. And then you reduce
but
innovation and
going
competition.
yes, those are all
You
true. But
increase
going back to
prices for American
GDP,
consumers.
it's a measure of the total production in an economy that's not equally distributed because we have really bad wealth inequality. It's only getting worse. We're killing our middle classes, lower,
You think tariffs
lower.
are helping with wealth inequality? Tariffs are a regressive tax system. So if tariffs are regressive, meaning that they're going to disproportionately tax lower and middle income individuals because they spend a greater proportion of their income on consumer goods, then how the hell could you frame this as it's going to be better for the working class
You're definitely right in the short term, but nobody's denying that. This is a
in the
long
long
term
run?
play.
But what
Well,
I
in the
just said
long
is in
run,
the
yeah.
long run. It's a tax on the working and little and lower class in the long run.
So we could break it down the pros and cons. So the onset of the tax, of the regressive tax, if you will, that's immediate, right? So in the short term, it's going to be bad, but then over the long run, you have an increasing value of the the quality and the pay of these middle class manufacturing jobs. They're slowly brought back into the country. That over time will overtake the flat but instant addition of that tax.
Wait, repeat that. I'm confused.
The regressive tax you mentioned, that's going to onset immediately, but
Hmm.
it's never going to increase, right? It's going to stay flat. Over the long run, the earning potential for all of those new jobs for middle class Americans and manufacturing jobs, that will eventually at some point overtake the flat regressive tax that tariffs impose on all American consumers.
No, there's no good evidence that the earnings will lead to a greater increase comparative to one the price increase, right? Because it is the case that getting most of the money from the consuming products. Okay, if it's getting most of the money from the consuming products, mostly impacting low and middle income individuals, right? Just because it is the case that there's going to be an impact in terms of that does not mean that there's going to be more jobs that then pass down that money to working and lower income individuals. This is relying on the idea that like businesses are just going to decide to give the money to their employees because they feel like it. Which again, if there's no profit incentive, there's no reason why they would do that. If they don't make money from doing it, they're not going to do it. They're going to do the profit maximizing condition. Hell, they have a
Right.
fiduciary responsibility to do so. They're not going to
Yeah.
give the money to their employees unless it makes them the most amount of money possible. So this is a
Right.
ridiculous
But
standpoint to say that like giving extra money to businesses and giving less money to working class people is somehow going to lead to more jobs in the economy and higher increases to wages. And if you cared about wages increasing based upon the study that I provided you earlier, you should want more immigration.